Ben Campbell asks this question: as a professor of engineering, I often use examples from MythBusters in my teaching. What are the most significant educational impacts you have seen from the legacy of the show? And he points out that he just gave a career talk to 200 high school juniors and asked how many were familiar with MythBusters, and 2/3 of the hands went up. High school juniors, these are 16-year-olds. Okay, so they're 16 years old, and it's been 7 years since we wrapped MythBusters. So you were talking to high school juniors who were 11 when we stopped airing this show. Man, I love hearing that. Right up front, I have no idea what the overall educational impacts of the show are. I can tell you the anecdotal data that I have from people coming up and asking for autographs at cons and then telling me the story of their intersection with MythBusters. And I just ran into a bunch of lovely Australians on the street here in the Mission who had grown up on MythBusters and didn't even know that it was an Australian-based show. I was delighted to inform them. And then I, casually insulted them because in Australia, that's a sign of affection. It's called taking the piss. But what people often tell me is that MythBusters was the show that helped them fall in love with science. I hear that it was a family activity. I've heard so many, many, many times the story of young women engineers telling me that it was a way in which they connected with their fathers, and it was a regular thing that they did with their dads. Taika Waititi told me that he watched the show with his dad. At the top end of all this, I want to say, we never set out to make a science show. We never set out to make an educational show. We never were trying to think, how can we teach people this scientific concept? I mean, yes, that entered into the conversation occasionally, but for the most part, we were really, really, really concentrating on answering these questions for ourselves and telling the best story we could about how we came to that answer. And so it is constantly with the most incredible humility that I hear stories like, I'm a PhD engineer and I got interested in this field largely because of because of your show. I will tell you, if I had a desire for an educational legacy of MythBusters, it would be empirical-based knowledge. It would be trying it out for yourself. One of the times Jamie enraged me the most on the show was we were trying to figure out how to aim mirrors for Archimedes' death ray. And it's a very hard thing to aim the reflection of a mirror because every time you move it, you're changing both the angle that the light is hitting the mirror and where you're putting it. So you can't just have a simple aiming reticule built onto the mirror. There has to be something attached to the landscape around you in order to be able to know you're aiming the reflection from your mirror at something. And the way we came up with solving this was by using a net. And we figured the net would inhibit very few photons from getting to their target, but it would give us something that we could see where our beam was going. And so we lined the shore of Alameda, right outside Encinal High School, with this netting. And when we were ordering the netting, Jamie said, I'm going to order black netting. And I said, I worry that you won't be able to see black netting using the aiming reticule. And I said, I'd like to use white. And he said, how come? And I said, well, obviously because white bounces more photons back to me, thus I'll be able to see the beam better. And Jamie gave me this look that I have had so many times from him, which was like, if you say so. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm talking photons. This isn't my opinion. White reflects more photons than black. Like, that is literally the definition of those two colors. One reflects more photons than the other. And if it's true black, it's reflecting no photons. So I couldn't believe I was getting pushback from him on this. But lest you start to wonder to yourself about Jamie's sanity, I also understood deeply that I was making an assumption, and he was like, I haven't seen that borne out, so I'm not going to believe it until I try it. Which enraged me so much. And yet, I'm here to tell you that that is what makes Jamie such a brilliant engineer. Is he is unwilling, he is so willing to not have any intuition about the thing and just to try it. And because of that, he has come with so many of the things he's done to really weird and interesting solutions because he's not trusting his intuition. He's literally proceeding as a tabula rasa towards the parameters of the experiment. And so while that used to absolutely shit me on a personal and professional level in the field, I also recognized at the time, even at that moment, that he was like, oh, I just want to. Even at that moment, I was like, yeah, I still know that that's why he is the engineer that he is. What was the question? Oh, educational impact. Right. That was it. It was trying something out in a way that was safe until you had a conclusion you could stand behind. Every science teacher you have ever had who did that in class is like your favorite science teacher, right? I mean, that direct experience instead of just being told. I mean, look, I'm not an educator. I have not been trained as an educator. And my opinions about education should be taken with the biggest grain of salt you can conjure in your head. And when we have standardized testing and it is so pervasive that teachers have to abandon their lesson plans in order to teach to a test, what you really are teaching kids is not any of the knowledge that is in any of those tests. You are teaching them how to memorize things long enough to get to the next thing. That's not knowledge. That's a skill, but it's not knowledge. Knowledge. Right? And it teaches kids that science and math and engineering are all things to memorize, which is like, good Lord, there are these unfettered landscapes of the untried and the untested, if you really are looking. And that makes them beautiful. I've always loved that different corrals of science and education are called fields, a field of knowledge. They are fields. They're open fields. And when we teach kids to memorize by Tuesday, we're ignoring that portion. And so I have, in the subsequent years of MythBusters, always been very proud of exactly that approach. We're going to try it, and we're going to try it to the best of our abilities. And we're not going to shortchange the trying of it out. In fact, that was what the show was all about, right? That was the source of the narrative, was we were really trying this for real. D Friendly. Oh yeah, I just wanted to point this one out. D Friendly asks, of all the people that we never had as a guest on the show, why didn't we have Mike Rowe? It is a really good question. One thing I'll tell you is that Mike's success and our success were like right on top of each other the whole time. And when you have a successful show, your network wants one thing. They want more episodes, as many as they can possibly get from you. I know that Mike shot 1 or 2 episodes a week with his incredible crew. They had a really, really wonderful procedure for going out into the field, spending a day doing pre-production, spending a day shooting, giving Mike the background he needs, bringing him in, having him do his incredible magic, all of that stuff. But it was all happening at the same time we were filming our show, and we were both in full production, i.e. full year-round production for more than a decade at the same time. So that's the first explanation why Mike was never on the show, is he and we were just too busy. But secondly, I do want to point out that there's this lovely thing Craig Ferguson gave the first time Jamie and I went on the Late Late Show with Craig Ferguson. He was a huge MythBuster fan. He brought us on, he put us on the couch. We didn't have to sing for our supper, and we just talked. And that was amazing. There's the thing with talk shows is unless you're a certain level of famous, you have to do something on the show. You can't just be, which is fine. That's the reality. But at the end of the recording, when we wrapped and the audience was applauding and everything, they cut to commercial and Craig turned to us and he says, "Was that okay? I hate being on any show that isn't mine." And he's totally right. You can feel so relaxed about being on camera on your own show and your own thing. I recognize this is a rarefied job atmosphere, but it was a beautiful little insight he was giving us that, yeah, being on someone else's show is always stressful. It's always a little bit rough. You don't know the crew. You don't know how it goes. You don't know. Yeah. That's the other thing is it's often, it's not like it's not fun, but it's a little scary. There you go. That being said, we talked a lot about getting Mike on to do a dirty job for us, right? I mean, it was a total natural. And we talked about it several times with him and his production team, and we just could never make it work. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to support us even further, you can by becoming a tested member. Details are, of course, below, but it includes all sorts of perks, and we're building them all the time. You get advanced word and behind-the-scenes photos of some of our projects. Questions, you get to ask direct questions during my live streams, and we have some members-only videos, including the Adam real-time series of unbroken, unedited shots of me working here in the shop. They are weirdly meditative. Thank you guys so much. I'll see you on the next one.